A new report has found terror attack survivors are facing a barrage of online trolling and harassment, including 1 in 6 receiving death threats and a third seeing their stories twisted into conspiracy theories.
It's horrific, isn't it? Tomorrow marks 6 years since the attack at Fishmongers Hall near London Bridge, which claimed the lives of Merritt and Saskia Jones, who were working at a prison rehabilitation conference. Claudia Vince, a close friend of Jack's, was also there that day and believes online harms are preventable and we can have greater protections for survivors. And Claudia, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm sure it's already, you know, a 24 hours coming at you, which is loaded with emotion anyway, let alone dealing with what you're dealing with. How were you hoping to mark tomorrow, and how do you fear it's going to be marred?
I think the benefit of this report coming out today is that we want to almost use the anniversary as a push for positive change to kind of try and address some of these problems that so many of us face. And it seems to be the first time in 6 years where I've felt like it's possible to kind of try and use that opportunity to push for something better for victims of terrorism, which feels important.
So what did you experience? You were there the day you lost someone very close to you. What did you experience?
I think there were 2 strands to it. One strand was the kind of barrage of messages that I was receiving on my own personal social media.
What, unpleasant messages or supportive messages?
It was largely people who wanted to speak to me, wanted to know what had happened, wanted a scoop of the story. I think it was a mixture of people...
So inquisitive, journalists potentially?
I think, yeah, some journalists, but some general members of the public. I had some people claiming to be friends of friends, that now, retrospectively, I know that wasn't the case. So it became very hard to trust people. And I think the other thing that impacted me hugely was the spread of the footage of the attack on social media. Before the day was even over, the footage of the attack had gone incredibly viral. And what we found in this report is that can be really, really traumatising for people who've been involved.
So do you think that people are simply thoughtless on an extreme scale, not thinking what you're going through and how this information hitting you would be so difficult in a difficult situation anyway? Or do you think there's a bit of malice there? What do you think it is?
I think in some of the examples that we found in this report, there is definitely a degree of malice. I think some of the more extreme examples are claiming that people are crisis actors, that the attacks didn't happen. We've had accounts of people lying in a hospital bed to be told that, you know, this didn't happen to them. And I think those are the most extreme examples that we're really trying to kind of rally against.
So the first thing is you see the terror attack online. I can't imagine what that does to you when you've stood there to be re-traumatised. Nobody asks your consent. It's taken completely out of your control. That's the first thing. And there was a statistic there that was deeply shocking. 1 in 6 people who have survived, survivors like you, find themselves the subject of death threats. Now, I'm not going to ask you to relive them, but so our audience understands, because they haven't stood in your shoes, just give a sense of the type of things that people say.
I think, again, it's something that is really hard for people to manage. Often in the immediate aftermath of an attack is when we're in our most vulnerable moment, and it's something that we never expect to happen to us. So it feels like people are preying on that vulnerability, and that's when I think in our rational minds and in our kind of, you know, rational brains, we're able to say, you know, we know this isn't good for us. But I think when your whole life has been flipped upside down, it's very, very hard to know who to trust. The response that I had really was to just withdraw, and I think that probably had an impact.
But just to be clear, we've got people who are malign, let's call them what they are, aggressive, nasty, sometimes people, I'm going to put it colloquially, lunatics, right, who claim that all of this stuff is conspiracy theory. They get in touch with you and they harass you. And the problem is here, just so we can understand it, is that there's very little that you can do in response, because the social media companies are responsible for housing and platforming some of this stuff. So the question is, I mean, do you think the social media companies are doing enough here? And if not, what should they be doing?
Yeah, so our report is calling for a massive kind of look into how government and social media companies moderate the harmful content that is shared online. In terms of the government, we're really calling for a robust enforcement of the Online Safety Act, which I think we recognise probably needs to be bolstered by secondary legislation, just to make sure that those kind of tools at people's disposal are in the best possible way. In relation to the social media companies themselves, I think we really need a point around how they moderate the harmful content. They almost kind of, we're calling for some crisis response teams where social media companies have a team ready when there's a major incident. I think too often when it comes to social media, the conversation is, oh, it's just hard to regulate, and then it shuts down the discussion. I think we need a much more critical look at how we're using social media.
And what can all of us do to maybe think, I guess, is part of it, when we're, you know, gripped in horror at something tragic that's happened? And also, I guess, I'd like to hear a little bit about your wonderful friend Jack, because I'm sure he's absolutely in your thoughts.
Absolutely. I think in terms of members of the public, I would just really call for people to be cautious and to think twice about what they post on social media. Often the footage that we see of attacks is someone who just happens to be passing and they click record on their phone and upload it straight away. And I think we just need people to be a little bit more reflective about how they use social media and also avoiding engaging with really toxic influencers. I think one of the things we're really worried about is how radicalisation may spread when this type of content spreads, and that's what we need to be cautious of. In relation to my friend Jack, I think this time of year is always a time when I'm thinking about him lots, and one thing that keeps me going is I think if the roles were reversed and I'd been injured fatally on that day, he would be here doing this, and I think that's the most important thing for me.
Amazingly
wonderful.
positive message.
Yeah.
And so important. And, you know, to those out there that would seek to do violence towards, that's what it is online. I mean, I've got a rather stronger message. I mean, you're a total dirtbag, aren't you? Well, no better way of putting it, frankly. But thank you so much for your courage and for your memory, and let's hope some positive change moves forward because of your courage being here today.
Yes.